It is 7:03 in the East. It is 4:03 in the West. And this is the strategy session for Tuesday, July the 25th. I am Reed Galen. I will be air traffic controlling this evening. Joining me as always is author of best-selling books, Everything Trump Touches Dies and Running with the Devil, as well as the host of the Enemies List, Rick Wilson. Rick, welcome.
Reed, how are you?
I'm well. As always, host of That Trippy Show and legendary Democratic strategist, Joe Trippi. Joe, welcome back to America.
Yeah, great to be back with you guys.
And as always, author of It Was All a Lie and legendary strategist in his own right, Stuart Stevens. Welcome.
Thanks for asking me to the party.
All right. Hail, hail. The gang's all here. It's good to have everybody back. All right. So, guys, we're going to cover a couple things tonight, but let's start with the state of the Republican race. Here we are now about a month away from the first debate amongst Republican primary contenders. It will be held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is the Scott Walker debate hosted by Young Americans for Freedom, which at this point should be, I think, Old Americans for Freedom, given that it's started, I think, when my dad
The young ones are the Young Americans for Fascism now.
Right. Yes, they great haircuts and very sharp suits. So, Rick, being the Florida man and living down the street from Ron DeSantis's campaign headquarters,
literally, Trump, seriously, like a mile away.
I'm sorry. We may need to get you to move. So Trump is still north of 50%, as he has been for some time. DeSantis's glide path is headed downward. Vivek Ramaswamy and Tim Scott seem to have a little bump. Chris Christie is out there punching at Donald Trump as much as he can. Nikki Haley's out there making no sense at all. So tell us, what have I missed in that 30 seconds that I just
listen? You've got it pretty clear. I mean, we were learning tonight. Well, we learned today that they fired about another 30% of their staffers. They fired about 10% of them. 10% of them on Friday. They fired about another 30% today, including, interestingly enough, it seems like Pushaw has been not fired but sent to Siberia. They promoted one of her minions above her to comms director. They also, folks, you haven't heard this name most likely, they fired tonight a guy named Nate Hochman. Nate is an alt-right, far-right, I won't say neo-Nazi necessarily, but he's not as uncomfortable with Nazis as one would hope. He's a voice of the very, very far extreme edge of the alt-right that tried to sort of clean itself up and brush itself off after Charlottesville. They are firing people left and right. They're in a financial death spiral, even with their burn rate right now. Even with the money they have in the bank, the campaign itself will run out of money sometime in October because they're not raising small dollar fundraising, and the big dollar fundraisers who went out to Park City this weekend to hear their pitch.
I didn't get invited, by the way.
Reed, I was going to say, I was wondering if you'd shown up there and not told us about the fun and the parties. But the donors there, I was told that at least one major donor there confronted them on the private jet travel that Ron and Casey really enjoy. And as all of you guys know, private jet travel is a rare thing for most people. But man, it's so nice. And they want it all the time. They want it to, commute down to Miami. They want it for everything. And people are noticing that they're burning $300,000, $400,000 on private jets every couple weeks.
So, Stuart, let's spend a little time on the DeSantis meltdown. I think we've all been through them. There are some truisms about the off year of a presidential year and the campaigns that start. One of them is that if you're on a big campaign and you're the first guys and gals in charge, you're almost certainly going to be fired, and which I have certainly been. But why
I think we've all been to that rodeo.
Why doesn't anybody learn, right? Like, there's enough of us around. There's enough institutional memory, not just amongst Republicans, but I'll get to Joe in a second, amongst Democrats. Like, these are old mistakes. These aren't new mistakes. These are mistakes that get made every 3 or 4 years, and yet people do them time and time again.
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at it. Is it a mistake, depending on how much money you're making? Because if you can have a contract where you can make a bunch of money and you get fired after 4 months, and then you can go pick up other clients, that's not such a bad deal. What I found was that in years that my firm did presidential races, we made much less money than we did otherwise. So it just makes sense because you could go out and do 10 to
for sure.
15 statewide races. And you could charge each of them individually, a certain percentage or retainer. And you just couldn't charge the equivalent to a presidential campaign. But to really do a presidential campaign the right way,
you had to be all in.
You can't do anything else.
Right.
So, I mean, and when Bush and Austin, when they set up the 2000 campaign, they made everybody get rid of all their other business. Remember, They made Carl sell this direct mail firm, which he sold to his employees.
That's right.
And then gave them a bunch of business. And sometime around October, when they all started driving new Mercedes, I can remember Carl banging his head on the desk, like, "What? Why did I do this?" But it's, I think the problem with the DeSantis campaign is, among other things, on the staff level, is he has no loyal core. There is no one in this because they believe in Ron DeSantis.
Right.
And I think that it's pretty much another truism that no one gets elected president that way. If you don't have a core of people who are with you, who are going to ride or die with you. And, one of the things that always really impressed me about the Biden primary operation is, they start as a front runner. They just get the hell kicked out of them in the first two races. And there's such hydraulic pressure to change, fire people, change your message. It never works, but you still do it anyway. But Biden didn't do that. They decided, I guess probably came from him, that they were going to win or lose with who he was. And damn if they didn't win, which is pretty amazing and incredibly impressive to me.
So Joe, another trope in this business is that campaigns are reflections of their candidates. And so this is an awfully, this is not a magic mirror if you're looking in that looking glass. But let me ask you this. I mean, as someone who devised the laying off of 100+ people in 2007 on the McCain campaign after we made many of the same mistakes DeSantis did, can you pull out of the dive?
Part of that, though, is what we're talking about. I think you were the first one who said this when we were talking the other day. Is the big problem is you can't fire the candidate. We've all been there. I've been there for sure.
Or the spouse.
And so,
we've also all been there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you get there.
Or the spouse.
Exactly. And so, you can go through this thing where you fire a third of the staff, then you fire half the staff. I mean, everybody can go. It's a common mistake to get in the cockpit and start spending too much and fueling up the plane and over hiring. And that's an actual common mistake. You can recover from that if you have a candidate like McCain.
Right.
Where some of it's him, but not all of it. It's, this is like all DeSantis. I mean, look, it reminds me, and it's not fair to put John Glenn in the same category, but very similar. John Glenn was supposed to be the main challenger to former Vice President Walter Mondale, the one in the field that was going to surge and really, launch and take him on. Well, he launched just in a lot of ways like DeSantis did, as the guy who's going to take Trump on. And then that was it. Everywhere he went, it went down there. They made all the mistakes of spending. He wasn't a great candidate. He was a great American hero, which is why it's not fair to compare him to DeSantis, who's everything but. But it reminds me of that because he just collapsed. He never came back. It was a stunning thing to watch. And I just have this feeling watching the DeSantis campaign, to stick a fork in them, they're done. I just don't see how they come back, not just because of the staffing and stuff, but because of the candidacy, the messaging that he took off on, I just don't see the path at all.
Well, so Rick, let me ask you this. So on that, right, and I don't want to spend more time than is necessary on DeSantis, but the weird thing is that he has these mega donors both inside the campaign who are maxing out, and then to his super PAC as well, who are the donor class that didn't want Trump back, right? He's embarrassing, but they clearly were okay somewhat with his policy.
Right.
But
the
DeSantis,
establishment donors, right?
right. But DeSantis was aiming squarely at the, as you called him, the alt of the alt-right. Even up to this day, right, with all the woke and obviously the stuff that he's done legislatively and policy-wise in Florida. I mean, that seems to be sort of a centrifugal force twisting. It's not the right word, but you know what I'm talking about. Forces at work, at odds with one another, because 6-week abortion bans, don't say gay, the fight with Disney, like those might be things that make the base happy, but they're not going to make your donors happy.
Listen, Ron DeSantis was the choice of the old Republican money class. Private equity guys, hedge fund bros, Silicon Valley types. They wanted Donald Trump gone. They thought Ron DeSantis would be all the things they wanted from Trump: tax cuts, regulation, cuts, things like that. They thought they'd get all that from Ron DeSantis and that he wasn't crazy. Well, when they went in the room and said things like, "Oh, that 6-week abortion ban, that's just for the rubes, right?" And DeSantis looks at them with the fucking crazy eye and he's like, "No, I believe that." And, this woke stuff's a joke, right, Ron? He doesn't. It's not a joke for him. He believes in this crap. He has gone fully into the matrix. He's gone fully off the rails. And that weird sort of character, it does not play with these major donors. And so when you've got staff members tweeting out Nazi memes and Nazi videos and all this stuff with Aryan race symbols in it, of course they're eventually going to catch up and get into the radar screens of these donors who are not those people. Most of these mega donors are pro-choice. Most of these mega donors work for companies that have expansive LGBT programs, rights for LGBT workers. And they really weirdly reflect America a lot more than Ron DeSantis does. And so when they tried to pull him back in, they got the response of, no, what's most important is that we win our very online meme war and that we act like,
I think we lost Rick. Rick, we lost you. So we're going to ask you to.
Let me just jump in here.
Yeah, jump in. Yeah, jump in.
I think that DeSantis looked like a successful model, right? So big state Republican governors getting elected president or winning nominations, there's a history of it. Reagan, Bush, Romney won the nomination.
Right.
The thing is, you think about those guys, they were such different characters than DeSantis. They were positive. They were optimistic. They were expansive.
They like the country.
They weren't
they
mad
like
at
America.
They weren't mad at the world. And DeSantis looks like that, has those credentials, but he's a small man running for a big job. And he keeps getting smaller and the job keeps getting bigger. And that disconnect, I think, is what's really happening. I mean, I think in their hearts, they look at this and they say, I wouldn't hire this person to have a substantial role in my company. And they felt that way about Trump. And now they realize that about DeSantis. And I think they looked at this thing that he won by 19 points, which is a complete false.
It's not an accurate depiction.
I mean,
of what,
Rick
what
Perry
he, what
won by
did.
12.
Right. Go ahead, Joe.
But Richard Ben Kramer, wrote the book "What It Takes," which is the Bible of, like, if you're running for president.
All of us.
Which Joe is prominently featured in.
But it really and what I've discovered is when these campaigns start, it's you can spot people that don't have what it takes pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ron DeSantis does not have what it takes. I mean, you look at Iowa, for example. I mean, he could win Iowa. I mean, he would have a chance there. I mean, theoretically on paper. But the problem with Iowa is you've got to go into the room. They either want a front runner that they love, who they go, yeah, he's busy, he can't come here all the time. That's probably Trump, right? But they want an insurgent that they can connect with in that small room and fall in love with. And there is right there, Ron DeSantis doesn't have what it takes. There's no way that the more small rooms he goes into, the more people don't like him. The more they see them, see him, the more they repel against. He repels them.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even. Again, I mean, I agree with what Rick's saying about and Stuart is saying about donors and who he is, but I think even like just at the basic voter level, even somebody who might buy into his policies, he doesn't have the capacity to connect with people the way you have to in a presidential campaign, particularly in the early states before you get to where TV can buy stuff.
So I was doing a conference, Rick, probably 2014, early 2015, and we had Scott Walker do a video for us. And I'd never seen him speak or anything, right? And yeah, it must have been early 15. I'm like, this guy? No way. There's no way this guy's ever going to be president of the United States. Like, you just know. And then he gave one good speech at the Butter Barn or whatever it was in Iowa, right? And 72 days later, he's out of the race, right? And so, like, this is to Joe's point, like, it's pretty clear to see who's got it, who doesn't. Of course, you know, somebody said staff matters, but maybe they matter on the margins. This really does come down to the candidate. But let me ask you this, Rick. So we talked about this maybe on a call. If DeSantis, you know, is still at somewhere between 15 and 20% roughly, right? 14 to 19, I think you said. And he goes, whether or not it's next week or October, where does that support go?
Look, this idea that you're going to have a horse race against Donald Trump. Hang on, folks.
All right.
I don't know if anybody's getting this audio or not.
No, it's a little rough. So Rick, Sam, go ahead and take Rick out. You guys figure it out. Stu, tell me, where does this support go?
You know, I would really like to see second choice for DeSantis, but of their voters. But just play it out. I would say if Scott is doing well, that he would get 30% of them. Mm-hmm. I think some will actually go to Nikki Haley. You know, her donor, if you look at her super PAC donors, they match up a lot with DeSantis donors.
Right.
And the question is, where are these really hardcore voters that really like this stuff? I think they're going to go back to Trump.
Joe, that's what I think too. Tell us what you think.
I think that, look, what made DeSantis climb up, you know, into that second position as strongly as he did was, again, all the things you're saying about why people, you know, were looking away from Trump, et cetera. But fundamentally, they thought that he had a better chance of beating Biden than Trump did, whether it's because he was Trump without the bags, whatever their thinking was. And so I think the problem once he falls is going to be we already know like something like 57% of the Republican Party thinks Trump is the one that's best equipped to defeat Biden. I mean, some big number of the party thinks that. The only other person that they thought would do a better job of beating Biden than Trump was DeSantis. That's what got him to where he got. That's falling apart. The only person that has a chance, if and when they emerge, is when they emerge. Does the Republican Party writ large, or enough of them, turn to and say to that, "Wow, this person could beat Joe Biden"? That's when I think all of them are in trouble, because everybody who wants to do that is who is not with Trump will coalesce around that candidate, and he might be able to pull, or she might be able to pull some votes from Trump, not because they don't like Trump anymore, but because they believe, hey, we've got a chance with this person. That's what happened with Gary Hart and Walter Mondale. I'm sorry to keep dating myself and going back.
No, not at all.
But what happened was, look, had George McGovern come in second, or been the person that emerged, I don't think there's a chance that there would have been a race on the Democratic side. Everybody would have believed, I've got qualms about whether Walter Mondale can beat Ronald Reagan, but this guy, George McGovern, isn't going to do it. So that's what I'm saying. You could have somebody emerge that's like ridiculous. They eke out 2 points and come in second in Iowa or someplace, and the press goes crazy about them. It's not going to do it. It's got to be somebody that people believe or perceive is a strong challenger to Biden. That's the only thing that people are coalescing around. And I think that's why Trump has so much stickiness beyond just the MAGA crowd in the Republican Party. They think that.
You know, one of the easiest things in politics is to get repeat customers.
Right.
And this was a key element for McCain in New Hampshire. McCain didn't need new voters. He could win with the voters that he had before. And I think, because, you know, he beat Bush by 19 points. I was in that room that night. That was not fun. We were ahead by 65 points and we lost by 19 and outspin him 3-1. I mean, you really got to work at that. But Trump, all of these people had voted for Trump before.
Mm-hmm. And he's won, right? I mean, yes, he lost in 2020, but he did win in 2016.
And he won in 2020, Reed. I mean, come on.
All right, so
they'll come around. They'll come around and they go, well, okay, look, I gave DeSantis a chance, but Trump is the tough guy. Trump is the guy that can fight.
He'll do what it takes, and I really do believe. So, but Joe, to your point about the not winning the 2020 election. So, you know, Stuart said this more than 2 years ago. Now, when I first started hosting the Lincoln Project podcast, it was at post January 6th. And Stuart said that anybody who, you know, aside from Trump, if he ran again, which we didn't know he would at the time, well, we had a good idea, was that anyone who wanted to win the Republican nomination was going to have to toe the line one way or the other that 2020 was stolen from Donald Trump. Subsequent to that he wasn't responsible for January 6th, or he was somehow absolved from that. Tim Scott, who's supposed to be the good one, who's supposed to be the positive guy, right, refused to hold Trump accountable this week when asked point blank. And to me, you know, like, I got to tell you, like, do I like Tim Scott? I'm sure he's fine. But at the end of the day, like, this is the question. This is the place you have to line up and say, if you believe he was okay in 20, if you believe that January 6th was just a thing that got out of hand, come on.
You know, just to interrupt, sorry, guys, I'm having a little technical bump here tonight. When you think about that whole Tim Scott interview the other day, that was so unbelievably, like, if you're a Tim Scott fan and you saw that interview and he basically said, well, you know, Trump wasn't there on January 6th. That's like saying bin Laden didn't fly the plane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He motivated it. He encouraged it. He directed it. He pushed people to do it. He said, we're going to march down to the Capitol. And I'm sorry, that was a moment where I thought, you know, where any hope I had of Tim Scott ascending to some higher moral plane was dismissed. And Nikki Haley did the same thing. And of course, Ron DeSantis has spent his entire campaign, I never back down. I tell the truth. But he won't tell the truth about Donald Trump. He won't tell the truth about what Trump did on that day.
So Joe, let's turn the prism a little bit and talk about the Democratic Party leadership, voters, et cetera, which is, I was on the phone with a friend of ours yesterday, talking about, you know, the state of things, and, you know, a lot of, you know, sort of stamping of the feet, and, you know, I don't want to believe it's going to be Trump again. I don't want to believe it, and I'm not going to believe it, and you're not going to make me believe it until I actually see it. Is this sort of a natural routine for Democrats, or is it, you know, is it like, just, again, you know, Stuart said previously, like, you just can't imagine it would happen again?
No, I think it's as we say, you know, fight the war we're in, not the one you want to be in, and They keep trying to fight the war they want to be in, which is it's not Trump. And I just think, you know, I still to this day don't see any reason, way, shape, or form to think it'll be anybody other than Trump. I'm open to it. I mean, I'd love to see the guy go, you know, fall apart. But it's just that there's nothing in any of the data that suggests that, and I think it is wishful thinking.
So, guys, you know, I want to pivot off of the Republican field generally, and, you know, talk about Trump in particular and DeSantis in particular, the two of whom have been, I think, most odious on othering Americans, right? Americans they disagree with, or people who aren't you know, in line with them, or, you know, people they're using as the culture war. So, Sam, please go ahead and run.
Othering is the right word.
Let's go ahead and run that video that posted today. It's about a couple minutes, guys.
Yeah.
If I was the deep state and I wanted to destroy America, I would rig the election with a puppet candidate. one that was so compromised that they would never say a word about it. I would create a false flag that allows for mail-in ballots. I would be in charge of the ballot counting machines. I would create a false flag to blame all who question the results of the election. If I was the deep state, I would prosecute anyone that went against me. I would sue and prosecute anyone that spoke up about the fraudulent election. I would use my powers to shut down all your internet businesses and bankrupt you. If I was the deep state, I would make everyone an example why you should never question a Democrat ever winning an election. I would imprison my foes. I would use my corrupt DAs and blackmailed judges to destroy you. I would make sure all crimes I ever committed never happened. I would prosecute my biggest competition. I would make sure they could never run for office ever again. If I was the deep state, I would get everyone that Ukraine Nazis were good and women are men. If I was the deep state, I would own every politician that mattered. If I was the deep state, I would push my pedophilia ambitions on you. If I was the deep state, you'd question your sexual identity but not the medical establishment. If I was the deep state, you would fear to ever resist me. If I was the deep state, you would wish I was really the devil. If I was the deep state, I would say mission accomplished.
Woo!
Look, I just got to point out, my last book I dedicated to the deep state. So I'm glad to see that that we're winning.
I mean, that's guys. I mean, look, we're not, we're not shocked or surprised by much, but Rick, like that was, first of all, it's got that thumping sort of, beat, right? That these meme troll guys love. I mean, my goodness.
It tells you everything you need to know.
Look,
about
the
to do.
these people are high off what I call conspiracy copium. They live in a world where that stuff is real in their brains. They are so effed up. The people who made this are out swinging their dicks around on Twitter and social media right now saying, we have memed this into existence. Y'all, you made a crazy video. Plenty of people do this. This is the advertising equivalent of the drunk guy outside the bus station screaming that aliens have a probe up his ass. This is lunacy. And as even, somebody like Eric Erickson, who's no friend of the Lincoln Project, said today, this is an ad that's meant to feed the crazies in Trump's base, but it will alienate everybody else. I think that's right. But I think we should expect to see a lot more of this. Yeah. And look, I want to go back again. The DeSantis campaign just fired Nate Hochman, who produced a video with Nazi imagery in it. Nazi imagery. That video was not made in a vacuum. It didn't get made without somebody going, yeah, oh, that's cool, dude. That looks great. People in that office saw him doing that. People talked about releasing it through their burner accounts. They talked about it. This video, they're planning it. Trump people are promoting this video all over the internet right now. Why? Because they know that they're going to push and push and push more and more crazy out there and try to get these insane ideas into the dialogue. That's why I'm not going to address any of the specific things that were in there, because it's just batshit. It's like arguing with it's like arguing with wild animals. It doesn't work.
Joe.
Well, somebody in the chat was asking, will we get the people who buy this thing? Are we ever going to get any of them back? And the answer to that is no. They're gone. That's why. And
no.
And the Republican Party with Trump is held, is hostage. I mean, Trump is part of that, but it's the Republican Party toes the line with these people because they have to, because they need. This thing, everything's so close in this polarized world. They need that vote. They need those votes. They need the white nationalist supreme, all of it. They need the supremacist vote, all of it. So, and they're not going to kick it away.
Yeah, and Stuart, this to me is I know, I know we say this is always the craziest, and then it's like Peter Baker and Susan Glasser in their book talked about when someone would say, "How was that meeting with Trump?" and they said it was the worst meeting until the next meeting. right? And this is, I think, it seems to me that this, somewhere between 65 and 70% of the Republican primary electorate is now represented by two men for whom these values and these things that is where they are ideologically, right? This is not they're not the outliers anymore. They're the vast majority.
And it's about a lot more than ideology. It's about character. And look, why did we start Resolute Square? Because our whole principle is to say we're right, they're wrong. Mm-hmm. And I don't think these are good people. I don't think that they're misguided. I think they're bad people. Right. I think this is evil. And I don't want to associate with these people. I don't want to understand them. And somehow we've, had this whole journalistic mission to understand these bad people. Why? We should, right. Again, I've said this before, it's like, putting America's best reporters, like, why do men go to strip clubs? They're bad people because they like to hate. They enjoy this. This makes them feel superior. Mm-hmm. This makes them feel like they are better people. And look, you only have to look at one number. Of Americans 15 years and under, the majority are non-white. Mm-hmm. That's it. They already live in a non-white America. And they know it, and they're terrified. And this is their last grasp. If they can get a guy elected who will completely change what we consider democracy, as Viktor Orban did, their hero, that's the way they're going to hold on. And they're dead serious about it.
So, Rick, we're seeing this now in your state in Florida, right? With the with the African American studies thing, where now it's being taught that, slaves learn valuable skills, and then on Fox, Greg Gutfeld said, it was helpful to be a useful Jew in the concentration camps. I mean, we used to say, like, they say the quiet part out loud. They just say it all out loud now.
Right. And look, all of this moment we're seeing right now is the belief that they can have this culture war that will reshape America and make it once again, whatever this illusion they have in their heads that America was in the 1950s. They're not going to get that in a country that is, as Stuart pointed out, rapidly becoming a majority minority country. We don't live in the same kind of world we lived in years ago. We don't live in that same sort of like white suburban fantasy land. But the things they're doing to push back on it they're trying to rewrite history. They're trying to expunge the guilt of slavery. And I got to tell you, their excuse that not every part of the plan said slavery was good, it doesn't matter. Once you put a turd in the punch bowl, it's not punch anymore. And the glee with which the far right in Florida is defending this plan is as unseemly as you can imagine. And I called out this guy today. I used to consider him a friend. He has converted one of these Republicans who went from being a sort of center-right Jeb Bush Republican to being a MAGA nut. Manny Diaz, who's Ron DeSantis' education commissioner, is promoting this, pushing it, defending it. I wish he would see the light and change position on this. And their excuse is, we found some black people who wrote the plan, and therefore it can't be racist. Well, there is a movement in this state to corrupt and destroy higher education and K through 12 education, to turn it into something that is responsible and reportable only to the governor. And Ron DeSantis has proven time and again he believes in a very twisted version of America, and this is going to spread outside of Florida. You're already seeing people in other states trying to adopt this curriculum in Republican states. And look, it is not that slavery was a moral wrong in their minds. They're more concerned now that someone will bring up that slavery existed because they feel like they don't have any culpability in it, any responsibility to teach history accurately or correctly. And look, it's a part of the power of the far right media machine where Republicans now routinely just say, nope, no Republican is racist. That's a lie. There are no Nazis in our party. There are no white supremacists in our party. You're lying. It's all Democrats. It's all projection. And you know what? It's a superpower they have. Honestly, it frightens me because they really want to teach a version of history that isn't real. And look, I'm going to say this. I'm going to get in trouble with a little bit with this. There have been left-wing versions of this in the past where they wanted to teach that America is all bad all the time. Everything's wrong. Everything's broken. It can never be redeemed. I don't believe that. I believe an accurate reading of history is that we have a unbelievably painful origin story, that we have tried inefficiently and effectively to bend the arc the right direction. And this kind of thing with DeSantis and this curriculum, I look at it honestly as evil. It is evil.
Well, and Joe, in Alabama, just to extend it into the policy realm, a state that you know, where you work with Senator Doug Jones, the Supreme Court of the United States, who not once but twice stripped out pieces of the Voting Rights Act, said that the state of Alabama had so gerrymandered their congressional districts to draw a black district out of existence that they had to put it back in. So they draw a new map, they send it to the governor, still only one black district. So now we're not only into racism, we're also into nullification.
Right.
And this is this Supreme Court, by the way.
Fuck it, fire on Fort Sumter, guys, and get it over with.
It's just incredible. And it was totally ignore it. Just totally ignore it. Make it, you take a district that's 30% black and make it 36, 37% black and call it, we did what the court said. No, the court said majority of the citizens in the district have to be, you're stealing it if you don't make the majority African American, and they're still not going to do it. This is all going to go back to the Supreme Court again through the court system. The good news this time, last time the Supreme Court kicked the can past the election. I don't think that's going to happen this time. So, and I think they'll be, but it shows you how in these states where there's one party rule and it's now the MAGA party. Right. We're seeing it with abortion bans. We're seeing, but this stuff that Rick's talking about in Florida and that's happening in Alabama and other states, by the way, it's not just the only place. Alabama's not the only one. They are actually trying to block out and just totally change history, totally ignore history and rewrite it.
Well,
and deny people their right, their ability to elect a representative.
Well, and Stuart, this is why the norms, right, the guardrails, the rule of law are so important, in that there's no Supreme Court police force that's going to go arrest Kay Ivey or the leaders of the Alabama legislature, right? And if Republicans maintain control of the United States House, let's say through 2024 into 25, et cetera, they're not going to not seat the Alabama delegation because it's missing an African-American member, right? So, we're sort of at the place now where, okay, well, if Alabama did it and there's really no sanction, right, then I guess we can do it too.
Well, there's this larger phenomenon here that is very destructive to democracy, minority rule. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing it in so many different ways. So, we have a president, Trump, who lost an election by millions of votes, still was president. Bush was, of course, won the Electoral College, lost a popular vote. So now, in the history of America, there have been 5 Supreme Court justices who were confirmed with senators who represented a minority of the population. And all 5 of those are on the court now. So as big states get bigger, smaller states get smaller by comparison, and you're still going to have 2 senators. This minority rule is going to expand. And it's sort of built into our system. And it's something that we sort of dance around. But I just wonder, how long can you survive and keep a social thread that is united with some sort of, if you keep electing presidents who don't win the popular vote, when you have a Supreme Court that doesn't represent the popular majority, it doesn't represent the majority of the country, how long is this sustainable? I don't know.
Well, and none of us know, but here's what we do know is that if we don't win next year, right, at least the presidency and some key races around the country, then it'll be a moot point. All right, guys, as we get out of here, Rick, tell us one thing that you're looking at that the rest of us don't know.
I am watching the emergence of the Glenn Youngkin boomlet. I think it's going to boom and bust in record time. Youngkin apparently Jeff Rowe has been trying to get back into Youngkin's good graces. It's not working. But Youngkin is apparently telling people that even he realizes the Republican base is not crying out for another private equity dude in a sweater vest.
Well, that's maybe why he ran a private equity firm. All right, Joe, how about you?
I'm looking to see how any Republican office holders respond to that video that we just showed from Trump land, crazy land. I mean, it's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. I haven't seen it. It's I'm disturbed by it, but no one's going to denounce it. No one's going to say it should be taken down. It should be stopped. Not one of them, and that just shows you everything that you need to know about where that party is right now.
And feeds into what Stuart was talking about. Stu, how about you?
Look, I am focused, as usual, on Ukraine. And one of the more disturbing things about that video, which is, a whole cafeteria of disturbing things, was the idea that it's clearly a Russian propaganda tape.
Right.
So the Russians elected Trump, and he's delivering for him and has delivered for him in just unimaginable ways. But it is so critical that Ukraine break through. And if they can just have one breakthrough, they've only committed 20% of their army now. That really, what we're watching here is D-Day and its aftermath. And the fate of really Europe is at stake here, Europe as we know it. And we should all kind of hold our breath and do everything we can to support Ukraine.
Well, amen to that. So one thing I'm looking at, guys, is this week, Kevin McCarthy used the I word for the first time when it came to Joe Biden. That despite no evidence,
we called it.
Despite no evidence that the president has done anything wrong, or even anything that remotely approaches an impeachable offense, Kevin McCarthy is keeping a campaign promise. We didn't know how he'd do it, but we knew he would do it because they said it last year, right? They said that was three of the things they wanted to do. Right. They wanted to make sure the debt ceiling wasn't increased. They failed there. They wanted to make sure that Ukraine funding, got cut off. They failed there. And now they're down to the last leg of the stool. And so now, an impeachment inquiry will be in the offing. They will do this because their base demands it, because the crazy 20 who can throw Kevin out of office anytime they want will demand it. And Trump is sitting in Bedminster going, if I'm going down for this, Biden is too. Right. And so, this will get worse, as everything does before it gets better. But you know what? None of this should be surprising. All right, everybody, I want to thank you. I want you.
Reed, you predicted that at a fundraiser in April 2021.
Yeah. Well,
you predicted in April 2021.
I know. Well, being right all the time isn't that much fun. All right. So listen, everybody, listen to Rick's podcast, The Enemies List. Tune into that Trippy show. Find all of Stuart's writings on Resolute Square. I hope you'll tune into the Lincoln Project podcast. As always, gents, thanks for joining us. We will see y'all next week, and everybody be safe out there. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.